Simply Financial with Christopher Calandra, Certified Financial Planner, is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Simply Financial podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Calandra. This is episode number 28, season 3.
So my guest today is the president, CEO, and founder of the Modern Observer Group, Eric Lopkin. He and I have known each other for a number of years now. He and I work on a local radio show together. It used to be called The Business Buzz. It's now called Carnivore Radio. It could be listened to in the Hartford County area. And last week, hopefully you listened to the episode, I talked about financial goal setting or goal setting in general, paying particular attention to the how-to part of goal setting. And I wanted to have Eric on because I know he's done a ton of work with this, because the Modern Observer Group, his company, works with clients that are typically business owners, small business owners, and executives who want to advance their careers. So he does a lot of work with goal setting. So he's an ideal guest to have a follow-on conversation about goal setting, some of my thoughts, and kick around some ideas. So Eric, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to hang with me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So to start with, I did the show last week. I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to it yet or not, but the original thesis is that goal setting's become a little bit of a cliche. It's so talked about in magazines, books, podcasts, television shows, and so on. And I think it's a little bit of a shame because it's so unbelievably important that it really, I think, is detrimental that it's a cliche, because some people, especially younger people, might tune it out. But it's really, really important. I think we could agree on that. And then the second part of the thesis is that there's a lot about set goals. Goals are important, but I don't think enough attention is necessarily paid to the how-to set goals, as opposed to just the conceptual you should set goals. So I want to talk to you today about some ways that goal setting is important and some ways that we could speak to our listeners about the how-to part of things. So you have some experience with this topic, no?
I do. And you're absolutely right. Everybody talks about setting goals. And unfortunately, they don't talk about how to set those goals, and even more importantly, how to figure out what those goals are. I mean,
Awesome.
Most people don't actually set their goals properly. The biggest problem is most people make them too vague. They think in terms of New Year's resolutions. You know, I want to lose weight. I want to make enough money to retire. But unless you make those goals specific, you're never going to be able to accomplish them. It's not enough to say I want to lose weight or I want to make enough money to retire. You actually have to figure out, well, how much money is it you're going to need to retire? What's that actual number you need to get to, and when do you need to get to it by?
Awesome. So I know when I spoke on this topic last week, you're, I'm sure, familiar with the SMART system, and it's
Yes.
specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and then the T is for time frame. So, I mean, you hit right upon one of the most crucial things, and common mistake people make in the how-to is, you know, they have a, you know, kind of a goal out there, but it lacks specificity. And what's the trouble? Can you just, I know it might seem commonsensical, but to make sure we're all on the same page, what's the downside if you're not specific?
Well, the downside if you're not specific is either you won't achieve that goal at all, or you can sort of wiggle out of it. If I say I have a goal to lose weight, I can get on the scale tomorrow and go, look, I'm 6 ounces lighter than I was yesterday. Goal achieved.
Yeah, What a great accomplishment.
Right, exactly.
But for far too many people, even losing 6 ounces, unfortunately, is an accomplishment. But I know what you're saying. You want to be specific. One of the things that I talked about last week, which is a hot button topic for me on my side of helping clients. I know you help your clients. So I talk a lot about not just long-term goals, but also thinking short and midterm, because it seems to me over my 26-year career is that if you just set a long-term goal, going back to what you said, that you want to have X number of dollars when you retire, well, if that's, 20, 30, or even 10 years down the line, if you don't also have short and midterm goals, you won't necessarily feel like you're behind if you don't do anything this year, because you have so many years in the hopper. But that's a dangerous way to approach things. Dangerous, not that you're going to die or get killed or anything, but you're not likely to be successful. So maybe dangerous isn't the right phrase. What do you think about that?
No, you're absolutely right about that. And the example I usually use is actually students, because they know they've got a final coming up. And when do they wait to study? The night before. And they've done nothing necessarily, all semester to keep up with the work. It's not the best way to do it. And when you're talking about really long terms, like a 20, 30-year goal, it is impossible for a person to keep focus for that long.
Sure.
You need to narrow things down to a 3 to 6 month goal and break down that 30-year goal into 3 to 6 months increments. That way you can focus on that immediate goal, and that immediate goal is getting you closer to your ultimate goal.
Sure. You break it down into bite-sized pieces, and also things that are controllable. For long-term goals, and we're not saying, listeners, we're not saying you shouldn't have long-term goals. I have long-term goals. I'm sure Eric has long-term goals.
Everybody should have long-term goals, but they should be working on them all along and creating short-term goals that are part of the long-term goal.
Exactly. And then it also gives you greater control, because in long-term goals, you have an increased number of variables and things that can be out of your control. So I use the example of, if you're planning for retirement and it's 20, 30 years in the future, there's so many unknowables. How is your health going to be? People change careers, they change jobs, they may be unemployed for a little bit, their income can go up, could potentially go down, and that's just life happening. And then on top of that, you can't control what your investment return is going to be over long term. You can make projections, but you can't control tax policy. You can't control inflation. There's just so many unknowables that if you stick to the short-term aspect of your long-term goals, like you said, you also are then focusing your attention on things that are controllable, because what you can do this week, this month, this 6-month period, and this year, you have a little bit more control over, as opposed to something that's going to be 20, 30, 40 years into the future.
Right, and it's a lot easier to pivot when you have those short-term goals. Long-term goals can ultimately change. There's a saying in the military that no plan survives contact with the enemy.
Right.
And you have to be able to pivot to deal with conditions on the ground. And one of the keys to this that a lot of people miss is making sure you have the right goals. Using retirement as an example, if you're looking at an amount of money that you need for retirement, well, the goal of it isn't to have the money. It's, what do you want to do in your retirement? Why do you want that money? Do you want to be able to travel? Do you want to be able to, do absolutely nothing but never worry about a bill again? You need to figure out what the why is so you can set your actual goal. So many people will say, I want to be successful in business. Well, why? What is it that you want to do with that? Anytime anybody sets a monetary goal, money generally isn't the ultimate goal. Money is what's going to get you to what you really want to be doing.
Sure. No, that's a great point because, in that example, it's financial freedom. Or if you have a goal to save money for a down payment, you want to focus in part on the dollar amount that you're shooting for the down payment, but also focus on the goal of home ownership, pursuing the American dream, having your own home. And that's a powerful part of goal setting. I'm glad you put that up. And I could have a parallel thesis of adding on to, it's a cliche and that's unfortunate, and that the how-to is underserved topic. But then also, like you said, is you do need an important why. The why is really powerful, and having a why and keeping focus on your why should help you stay on track and get to your goal and be successful, don't you think?
Absolutely. The why is a very powerful driver. If you understand your why, and that's what you really want to accomplish, is that why. Why are you doing this? Why am I losing weight right now? Well, I don't want to have diabetes.
Right.
I don't want to be in such bad shape that I can't play with my kids. Whatever that why is going to drive you a lot more than I want to lose weight.
There you go. And it's going back to what you said with the quote from the military. I'm familiar with that quote. I use a different version. Mike Tyson, the ever-quotable Mike Tyson, said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Right.
I like that one.
It's very true. I love that version of it. The reason I use actually the military version is because they actually have something else called the commander's intent, which is that's the why. That's what we've been talking about.
Right.
When the troops hit the ground, they have the freedom to change the plan, but they don't have the freedom to change the commander's intent. That's that ultimate goal.
I gotcha.
When if you step into the boxing ring, if you're Mike Tyson, the ultimate goal is to knock the opponent out. If I were to step into the boxing ring, my ultimate goal would be to be able to walk out again. Yeah,
I was thinking I was going to say my goal would be to get out of there as fast as I can. I'm not in the right place. No, that's awesome. I've heard that military quote, and I know about commander's intent because I'm not a military guy, but I love reading military history. So I knew about those two things, but I never tied them together. So I really appreciate you doing that for me. That's meaningful for me.
Yeah, it's when the two are taken together, it's really applicable to all of our lives, and it does make sense. It's good to know that your plan can fall apart when it hits day-to-day, circumstances. But then what do? Well, that's where the commander's intent comes in. In terms of goal setting, that's where your why comes in, because that's what you're ultimately trying to accomplish.
So, I want to go back to something you had said earlier, and I wrote it down so I won't forget. But before we get there, one of my other focal points as I work with clients in developing their financial plan, which is after we've established financial goals and objectives, is tracking your progress, because I think that's another area where people don't take the right measures, because you could do everything that you and I said. You have a long-term goal, you bring it down to bite size, whether it's 3, 6 months, 1 year, whatever. And then also like a midterm goal. I had used the example, Eric, of, you have a retirement goal, let's say it's 30 years, and then you have a 1-year goal of how much you're actually going to save into your retirement nest egg for this year. So that's pairing the long-term and the short-term goal. And then I would also add in to the pair a third element, which would be how much money you'd like to amass in 5 years, because that's, midterm, something somewhat in your control, have some visibility. So all of that's well and good, but you have to track your progress So can you talk about your thoughts about tracking your progress? And maybe you could just, I assume you agree with me, can you confirm that your thinking as you've met with lots of people is that's an area where they don't pay enough attention to? They might establish goals, but they don't keep track, which leads to less of a chance that you're successful in achieving the goals.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about it being important, and most people do tend to fall down there. Like you mentioned SMART goals earlier. This is the M in SMART. It's, number 2 in that list is to measure the goal. It's very important because, one, again, if you don't measure the goal, how are you going to know if you accomplished it? But even more importantly than that, tracking that goal along the way actually gives you the momentum to achieve it. And you do want to be careful because you can over-measure. I use weight loss a lot as an example because it's something most people can identify with. But every doctor, everyone that's involved in weight loss will tell you don't get on the scale every day.
Right.
Because you don't see enough of a change in one day, it becomes discouraging. However, you do need to get on the scale on a regular basis, once a week, once every 2 weeks, to know if what you're doing is working. And also, it gives you that boost. If you're trying to lose 30 pounds and you get on the scale and you see you're down 10 pounds already, that gives you the enthusiasm to go, yes, I can do this.
Oh, yeah. Big
time. And, same thing with retirement. If you're trying to save $1 million and you take a look in the retirement account, look, you've already saved $150,000. Well, that gives you that incentive. Yes, okay, I've still got a long way to go, but look at the progress I'm making. And tracking that progress is so important both for your mindset in achieving the goal and for making sure that what you're doing is working. Remember, we were just talking about, no plan survives contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
If what you're doing is not working, you need to know that so that you can shift. If you've got a portfolio that's got, 4 stocks in it and those stocks are not doing well, you need to know that because you probably shouldn't be in those stocks.
There you go. There you go. It reminds me of the adage, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
There you go. No, that's good. And, one of the focal points here as we meet and work with clients, you probably don't know this, Eric, is that I'm a huge proponent. I've done it for myself, and it's done wonders for my wealth building and my goal achievement, is to have a net worth statement. So, how a business has a balance sheet.
Yep.
And so we advise our clients they should have a net worth statement. They should have a list of all of their assets, a list of all of their liabilities, if they have any, their debts, student loans, mortgages, car loans, credit cards, that kind of stuff. And regularly, I can't even say that word, regularly keep track of their net worth, which you find by taking your assets and subtracting out your liabilities, your debts, to arrive at your net worth. And, of course, the goal is over time is to increase your net worth. And how are you going to increase your net worth? Well, there's really only 2 levers that could be pulled. One is to increase your assets, and 2 is to reduce your debts, ultimately getting that to 0. But I have found for myself, now look, I'm an A personality. I'm a financial geek. I love reading self-help books and time management and all of that stuff. I may not be typical to all of my listeners, but by doing this and having the net worth statement, now I review it every quarter. Again, I'm a big-time geek, but I think at least if you did that and reviewed it twice a year, it's very motivational. Like you said, when I see that my assets are increasing, I still have some debts. I'm close to being completely debt-free. In fact, I'm 48. By the time I'm 50, I'll be completely debt-free. And I find it unbelievably motivating when I see, and I could go back and track how my wealth has increased over these many years as I've kept track. So we communicate that to our clients, and whether you're a geek like me or somebody that really is only paying attention to finances and money because you have to win with money, you get great motivation and enthusiasm by tracking and seeing how you're winning with money increasingly and how the smart decisions you're making are paying off as you increase your wealth. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's very important. Again, you do need to check periodically. And one of the things I've found with many people is the reason they don't keep track of the goals and check back on their progress is because they're afraid to see that they haven't made it. Absolutely. They're afraid to see that they've backslid. And you have to get over that fear, because first of all, it's okay to not be where you think you should be, or even to fall back a little bit. That happens.
Sure.
But if you don't know that it's happened, you can't take steps to fix it.
That's absolutely right.
So you've got to get over that fear of checking. It's, again, if you gained a pound instead of lost, it's not the end of the world. If your portfolio went down a little bit, it's not the end of the world. Maybe you need to rebalance the portfolio. Maybe you need to switch your diet up. But unless you know what your results are, you don't know if you can do that, or you don't know which direction you need to make those changes.
That's very well said, which actually brings me to my next point, which is about accountability. And tracking your progress can be incredibly motivational, as we just spoke about, but it also is an accountability tool, because if I stick with my plan and I do my net worth statement every quarter, and I look and I wasn't successful that quarter, I need to be accountable to myself, to my wife, to my children. And by looking at that and agree with you 100%, keep it in perspective. If I go back over a number of years, it's not like my wealth went up every single quarter. There's some quarters where you had higher expenses. The investments could have gone down. Some instances you may take on debt. Whatever the case is, life happens. But keeping track of your progress is also part of accountability. And what I had talked about on last week's episode, Eric, I wanted to get your thoughts, is I'm also a big believer in sharing your goals as an accountability component to them, because if you share with people that care about you and are in a position to help you, they will love you and help you achieve your goals. And then it also helps with accountability. For me, I call it the embarrassment factor, is that if I said to my wife or one of the team members here at Elliott Wealth Management, I said I was going to do X, I hold myself to a high standard. I'm, again, an A personality. I take that seriously to begin with. But once I start sharing it with other people, I don't want to be embarrassed. I want to live up to my word and what I said I was going to do. And I find a lot of people will keep their goals private. And I'm not saying I'm on the that I'm at the gym telling everybody what my financial goals are, people I don't even know. I mean, you have to be disciplined as to who you share and strategic on who you share with. But I like to share the goals. It helps me keep on track, keeps me accountable, and for me at least, throws in the embarrassment factor, because I really don't like being embarrassed.
Right. Most people don't like being embarrassed. And the fact of the matter is, when it comes to accountability, most people are absolutely terrible at holding themselves accountable. We're all great at holding somebody else accountable, but we're terrible at holding ourselves accountable. So yes, you do need, at the very least, I mean, the worst thing you can do for accountability is keep a goal to yourself.
Sure.
At the very least, you need to write it down. Commit it to paper or commit it to your computer somewhere where it's down, and it should be in a place that you look on a regular basis so that it reminds you that, yes, you have that goal and you need to move forward on it. Better than that is having someone else to hold you accountable.
Sure.
This can be family. It can be friends. It can be coworkers. Depending on what the goal is, you should have a personal network of people that you feel comfortable sharing this with, who will hold you accountable. There's an old joke, when you fall down, a friend will pick you up. A best friend will stand there laughing and pointing at you. And that's the thing. You actually want that, because nobody wants to be laughed at. That's your thought. It's like, if I don't do this, I am never going to hear the end of it. So I am going to accomplish that goal. And then a lot of people, have trouble putting these networks together. And that's where companies like mine come in, where people hire coaches.
That's right.
To help them in their business, their life, their career. Accountability is a big thing that we do, because every coaching session we have ends with, well, before the next session, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
That's right.
And that next call or that next meeting is, all right, how did X, Y, and Z go? What do you mean you didn't do it? Why didn't you do it?
That is awesome. I was thinking too, and this is great. It's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, is that we look at things very similarly, but we kind of draw on different experiences and different stories. And I'll just share one that I had heard, and maybe you've heard it too, but Arnold Schwarzenegger was not always fit and shape, muscular guy like he was at the height of his career. And so when he decided he wanted to get healthier and started working out, I guess he had a little bit of a belly. Have you heard this before?
I have, yes.
Yeah. So just to catch everybody up, so he would wear half shirts, which I guess back in the day, half shirts were a little bit more appropriate than they are in today's style and fashion. Not that either one of us are the most.
I don't know that they were ever fashionable.
Yeah. But he wore a half shirt, so he would show his belly, and he was embarrassed about his belly. Talk about accountability.
Yeah.
How many people would be that motivated and that committed to being in shape that they were going to embarrass themselves by wearing a half shirt, when wearing a half shirt in and of itself is embarrassing, and it's even more embarrassing if you don't have, I think, the body to pull it off. But that's another great example. And I'm glad you brought up the coaching, because our businesses are different, but in many ways they're the same, because we do financial coaching for our clients. And that accountability, that partnership, that's talking through the goals. Why? What are the obstacles? Why haven't you done it in the past? It's incredibly important when you get to things that are important in life. And you also look, even the top athletes, take Tiger Woods. There's the big golf tournament going on as we're recording this, right?
Yeah, the Travelers.
TPC in Connecticut. Is, that person has coaches. Tiger Woods has a coach, and he's one of the greatest golfers in the world. So we all need someone to help us in one or more parts of our lives, and that's okay. You don't need to do it all yourself all the time across all the areas of life. And that's why your firm, which I want to have you give out your website and how they could get more information from you. That's why your firm provides a great service. I think that's why me and my role as a certified financial planner is valuable as we help clients win with money. So thanks for joining me, Eric. For those that are listening and they'd like to find out more about you and the Modern Observer Group, also noting that you're very entrepreneurial, you tend to have yourself involved in a number of different projects. How could they get more information about the Modern Observer Group?
The easiest way is go to modernobserver.com. We've got all the information on the website. And from the website, you can email, call us, see about what our services are. We also run networking events around Connecticut. You can find the schedule on the website. So you can actually come out, meet with other business people, see what they're doing. And, we've talked a lot about, why to talk to other people about it. One thing that we sort of skipped over, and I think it's important enough to toss in, is that when you think about your own goals in your head, we have a tendency to think they are so difficult. But when you talk it out with someone, it helps you realize just how achievable it is and how much easier it's going to be with that help than you were imagining it. We all tend to imagine worst case scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
And most times it's not that.
That's a great final point. Thank you so much. I will be back with you on an upcoming episode of the Simply Financial podcast soon. In the meantime, when you're visiting modernobserver.com, go to my website, elliottwealth.com. You could get more information about me and my team. And if you're not a client, sign up for a complimentary consultation where we could find out about your goals and how we might be able to help. Thanks again, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of SagePoint Financial Incorporated and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of the information provided at these websites, nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management, LLC, not affiliated with SagePoint Financial.
Simply Financial is part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find Exvadio podcasts at exvadio.com/podcast, the Apple Podcasts app, iTunes Store, iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. So join us and stay informed and entertained.